Welcome, everybody. Glad you're here today. I imagine we're going to have some stragglers strolling in. We wanted to get this rolling. We're just a couple minutes behind schedule. For those of you that don't know, we're going to be streaming this live on Facebook, so if you are a member of Facebook, you can watch it later. We try to spread the word every which way we can, so those of you that are on Facebook, welcome. If you have an iPhone or a smartphone and you have Facebook on your phone, if you wouldn't mind taking it out and sharing it, sharing the post while it's live or even after you watch it later, that would be much appreciated. We don't get a lot of help spreading the word. It all has to happen on the grassroots level. So,
yeah, I'm going to jump in. Feel free to text somebody right now. Say we're going live, go to Facebook. If they couldn't make it for some reason, but they could get online, let them know. That'd be great.
Awesome. My name's Jackie Burns. I'm the state director here in Minnesota for the Convention of States. And so let me just tell you how we're going to do this today. We will start with a prayer and follow that with a Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll get into the presentation. After the presentation, you will then have the opportunity to ask any questions that you might have, and we'll be sure and answer them. So, and my understanding is that we're going to have one of our legislators is going to arrive, and so going to count on a team member to help us know when he does show. So he might be able to say a few words as well. So I've asked Greg to lead us in prayer, and then we'll follow that with the pledge.
Will we do the pledge too?
Yeah.
Let's bow our head in prayer, please. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the many blessings you give us and for the blessing of the freedom and liberty that you provide us by living in this great nation. Help us today to search for ways that we can preserve this nation. And we ask for your blessing on this meeting and on our leaders, and especially our president. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Please stand for the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so I would like to introduce to you our presenter. His name is Kevin Furman. He's a district captain. How long have you been on the team, Kevin?
A couple years now.
Yeah, for a couple years.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
He's a district captain and also a music. So are you a music teacher? What is it like?
I'm a musician by trade, so I perform, I teach, I write,
He does it
et cetera,
all.
et cetera. So
does it all.
spin a lot of plates in that world.
So he's going to do the presentation, and then we'll open it up for questions and answers. Take it away, Kevin.
Thank you. So I'm going to start with some thoughts, something I was reading recently. It was March 5th, 1770. Colonists in Boston were protesting British soldiers who continually harassed them in their city. On a day when the colonists were getting tired of it and throwing insults and or stones at the British soldiers, they fired upon the colonists. People died, and that sparked the urge to do something bold. John Hancock and Samuel Adams stood up in their assembly a few days later and said, we need to do something about the tyranny of this government. We need to make sure that they know they cannot do this to us. So you could say that these two started the whole freedom fighting event that we now know as the United States of America. So to start, I just want to say that it doesn't take everyone to make it all happen. It started with two, and here we are. So with that, I'm going to go through what we're going to talk about today, which is Convention of States, and I think that mindset for me recently has really kind of been very strong. So as Jackie mentioned, I'm a musician. I'm not a political person. I've never campaigned for any political person in office anywhere. Voted my whole life. I definitely did that because that is obviously very important, but didn't really feel the need to jump in because it seems so large, so big, so beyond my scope that I just kind of, I can't really do much, so I'll vote, do my best I can to be educated, and do my civic duty, but it never went beyond that. In my lifetime, I've seen so many changes with, and as all of you, that it got to be almost untenable where we're at. And so I started just kind of, what am I going to do about it? Am I just going to complain, or am I going to actually do something? And so, again, that's kind of where that quote came from. It's sort of, not that I feel that I'm a John Hancock or Samuel Adams by any means, but it does kind of start with people doing something. And so when I heard about Convention of States, which I'm going to get into, and we're going to talk for 20 minutes or so about this, and I've got a PowerPoint thing and whatever, but it really was, wow, this can actually do something. This could make a difference in what's going on here. So that's why I'm here. So it isn't because I just feel like driving an hour and a half to talk to a bunch of people I don't know and drive an hour and a half home. I think this is important. So it's worth driving an hour and a half to talk to a bunch of people I don't know and then drive back home. So anyway, that's what's going on. So as far as Convention of States, I don't know who got here from, like, you got a phone call from one of the team members that said we're having a town hall. I'm just kind of curious. Great. And oh, good, thank you. And then who, like, saw the newspaper article? There was one in the local newspaper said, we're having the town hall. You got here from there? Okay, good, great. And then like through an email or a text or something like that. I'm just kind of curious, like, how people got here real quick. And there'll be plenty of time for questions and comments later. But as I'm going through this, if you have a question just burning, you have to ask it. That's fine. Please do. And we are doing Facebook, and the reason I've got a microphone is so that they can hear me clearly. I can speak pretty loudly, so I'm sure I'd be fine without it. But just so you know, like, I might repeat your question if you have one, so that everybody on Facebook can check out what's going on. Anyway, so we could spend all kinds of time talking about what we see as problems right now, because there are plenty in our country. For the Convention of States project, we kind of narrowed it to 3 specific areas, and it's specific, and I'll get to why I say that way in a little bit. But these are the 3. So let's just kind of get into it. So the debt and the spending of the federal government, the federal overreach, and then also career politicians. It's just like a thought of, like, what is going on, why are we here, what are we trying to fix? Those are the 3 areas that we really want to focus on with Convention of States. And I don't think that's going to be lost on probably everybody here, like that. Those are problems. We kind of agree. Like, those are issues, right? And there are other things, and everybody's got their specific thing they have a hot button about, and I agree with most of those also. But we tend to focus these, and again, I'll kind of explain why it's like that. So just to give it a little bit more detail. So as far as the debt spending crisis, right? The biggest thing about it is we do spend a lot of money, and we have for a long time. And the silly thing about it for me is this, that it doesn't really matter who's in office. That's what bothered me the most about it in recent years, is even though there's a lot of lip service given to we got to cut the deficit or we need to cut back in spending, if you look at what has happened with our national debt, it's on a very steep incline, and that's very problematic. It's going to get untenable very, very soon if we don't do something about it. And that's my big thing, to be honest. That's my biggest problem, is we are spending ourselves into oblivion, and we need to do something. And unless we can tell those that have the purse strings, i.e. Congress, to knock it off, it's not going to change. So it hasn't happened. We've been trying to elect the right people and that sort of thing, which is good, but it still seemed to have this upward curve. That's an issue. Just real quickly, if you're like, why are we spending all this money? If you haven't done the research on that, all this stuff is researched. It's all on the conventionofstates.com website. So you certainly can go and check out the sources and find out where we're getting these numbers. It's not just out of the blue. But a lot of it is on what we call mandatory spending, Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, that sort of thing. The defense, education, energy is kind of the green part there, so it's smaller than that. And then there's the service of the debt. So it's a lot of money we're spending just to kind of do what we do, and yet we keep hearing about how we want to do more and more and more, but the debt keeps going higher and higher. So that's, to me, again, you can tell it's kind of a thing with me. So it's a problem. That's one area. Another one, the whole thing with regulations, we kind of see kind of a shift lately with Trump in office, whether you like him or not. He's made a shift in the regulation, and that has really spurred on a lot of growth in the economy. The problem is there's all kinds of non-elected bureaucrats still around that are making rules/laws that we have to live under. And since they're not elected, they're not really beholden to the voter anymore to us, the people. They just kind of do their thing and get sliding through. So I wanted to show you a couple of quick videos, actually. It's a good visual rather than me talk about it. So on this one, you'll see two piles of paper, actually. The laws that are passed by Congress, and then the second one will be those that are made by the bureaucrats. So let's see if I can get this guy to work. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Let's find out if I can get it this way. There we go. So those are the ones that were passed by Congress. And these are all the other ones by the unelected bureaucrats that we now live under. And luckily, some of those have been taken away and others put in lately, but it's still a very, very large problem. So in comparison, you can see, that's why we see it as we can't keep doing this and expect to live under a free society when people that are unelected can tell us what we can and can't do. All right? So that's not how it was designed. That's not what the Founding Fathers had in mind at all. So there's that. Also, about the Constitution, there's another video. Let's see if we can get that one to go.
People like us, people that are frustrated with Washington, D.C., often say, well, they don't follow the Constitution anyway. Not true. They follow the wrong one. They're following the Constitution as interpreted by the Supreme Court rather than the Constitution as written.
This, taken out of my pocket, is a pocket constitution. 4,000 words in the original document, 4,400 words. And if you count the amendments, we're talking about 7,000 words. But here is the Constitution in force today. This is 3,000 pages of Supreme Court rulings showing what every ruling has done to the original words. This isn't going to get any smaller. In fact, every time they publish this document, they leave a bunch of blank pages at the back for additional rulings that they know are coming. Every page in this document means a grant of power to the federal government. Understand that this is the Constitution in operation today. And unless we change it, unless we make its wording crystal clear, we're going to continue to operate under this document forever and ever until the whole house of cards comes falling down.
So again, pretty good. I mean, those are scholarly men, more than I, about the subject, and really point to exactly what we're talking about. Not only just in, say, all the environmental protection agency kind of agencies, all those kind of things where they can have all kinds of laws. It's even in the Supreme Court. So that's a concern. So we want to address that. And I think recently I saw somebody having a problem with the Convention of States idea because we want to change, i.e. amend the Constitution. How are we going to do that if it's not working now? And they were making an argument about the 7,000 word part, not the whole big one. And if that's a concern, it's really we're trying to get back to the 7,000 words and not live under the big 3,000 page deal. So just to put that out there in case that was a concern for anybody, or that had come up, or you'll hear about that someday. That's a good point. Yeah, we don't want to amend it in its entirety now. We want to get back to the original intent. So that's part of it. And then as far as overreach or unaccountable politicians, and we get into the other one, which career politicians is another issue that is a problem. And even though there is an argument for, well, people need to be there to know how the system works and be there long enough to do that, I have an answer for that for a second. It's my personal opinion. But as you can see, people have really made a career out of this on both sides of the aisle. It's a way of life as opposed to serving the people. And if you read any of the Federalist Papers or any of the documents from the Founding Fathers, they had no inclination to make this a career. They thought it was detestable. It was just something you had to do as a duty to your country. And we've turned that around. We've kind of let it be a very lucrative and powerful position. So hence people stay. And you can't really blame them necessarily. I mean, it's a pretty good gig, You're in for 4, 6, 12 years and you get pension for life and et cetera, et cetera. I mean, nobody gets that except them. And we've kind of allowed that to happen and given power to them, so that is part of the picture. So we'd like to do Again, another thing is, another part of that is, you can see, this is a graph of how long people stay in office in each Congress. So as we get further and further along, people are staying longer and longer and longer. So it's just kind of, basically my point, but in graphic form, right? So it's not going to get better unless we say, no, stop it. Right? I mean, that's pretty much it. And yes, electing someone new, because of the way the system is set up, even with somebody with the best intentions can go in, and then through figuring out how the system works, they have to stick around and they have to play the game, and therefore they need to stay longer to get in those power positions. My point about that is, if our system takes 12 years to figure out, I think the system is broken. In my opinion, yes, it's big. It's a federal government. I realize that. But if you go back to the original Constitution, they laid it out pretty simply. There was a lot of thought put into what they said and what they didn't say, and that the power should rest in the states, not in the federal government. We've kind of twisted that around a bit. And so that also is a thing. And so as far as, we want people in there so they can do good, yeah, I agree, but we need to change the system so they can do good with the minimum amount of time that they have. That's sort of where I stand with that. And certainly there's debate on that, for sure. And that's part of what the Convention of States can do, is have that debate. What does that mean? And we're going to get into that very quickly here. So those are those are the three areas. That's kind of detail and, personally where I stand in, or just, where we kind of stand with what we're doing. So, okay, well, that's all great. What are we going to do about it? Because I wouldn't be here if there wasn't a what are we going to do about it. I'm not really a guy that likes to complain a lot. If we're going to do something, let's do it. If we're not, then move on, So what we do as far as this is, we're going to use what is part of the Constitution. And to highlight that idea, I want to just bring up this. There's one more video I want to show you that sort of gives you some history on the part of the Constitution that I'm going to talk about for the rest of it. So here is a little quick video on that.
The 15th of September, 2 days before they signed the document, the end of 4 long, hot months in Philadelphia, they were ready to go home. But George Mason noticed that Article 5 only had a single method for amending the Constitution. He said, wait a minute, what if Congress becomes an obstacle?
It was given to us by George Mason, who said, look at guys, someday this government's going to abuse its power, and there won't be anything for you ever to ratify if it's counting on Congress to reduce the power of the federal government. So we need to give the states the ability to reduce the power of the federal government.
So with a little promo there you go. So thank God for the Virginia delegates. Man, these guys are very smart people. So as you can see, they wrote Article 5 very specifically, and just almost missed this opportunity for the states to have a say in what's going on. It almost was left entirely up to Congress, which again, the foresight to say, someday they're going to get too powerful. I believe we are at that point. They are too powerful. We've let them have too much power. So we have a way to do that, and that's with Article 5. So let me explain that a little bit here. So Article 5 is something that I don't think a lot of people study in school anymore. I don't remember studying it in school when I was in school, a while ago. So it's not, we don't study the Constitution well enough, in my opinion. So I thought it'd be worth speaking the text of Article 5, just to put it out in the space. I know you can all read, but I believe it's worth hearing. The Congress, whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to this Constitution or on the application of the legislatures of 2/3 of the several states, shall call a convention for proposing amendments, which, in either case, shall be valid for all intents and purposes as part of this Constitution when ratified by the legislatures of 3/4 of the several states, or by conventions in 3/4 thereof, as one or the other mode of ratification may be proposed by the Congress. So that's the part at which gives us, as the states, power to check the federal. So just that clause right there gives us a chance to say, that's enough, here's what we really want you to do. So what we're going to do is use that. We're going to use Article 5. We're not looking for radical, outside the government change, revolution, none of that stuff. We're looking for using the Constitution the way the founders intended to check the federal government. And thank God they did. I'm really happy about that. So just in case that's unclear, what does that look like? I'm going to step through a basic idea of how it goes. And certainly, again, if you have questions or anything, feel free to ask. So it basically starts with the people ask their legislators to call for a convention or pass a resolution to call for a convention from the states. So both bodies in each state have to have a resolution to say, yes, we want to call for a convention. So it starts there. It starts for people like us saying, please support this. We want this. We definitely want it. And the more people that call for it, the closer we are. So again, each House, Senate of each state has to call for that to pass as a state that has passed the resolution, so to speak. Like they're ready to call the convention, and you need 2/3 of the states to do that. And at this point, that's 34 states. So 34 states have to say yes, we want a convention. As long as we do it correctly, and I'll get into that in a moment, quickly, all the resolutions have to have the same wording, or very, very similar, so the same wording, so that Congress can look at them and say, yep, they agree, they need to have a convention, all right, here you go. So once we do that, then the federal people really don't have a lot of say. What happens is they say, okay, here's the convention, it's at this date, go do your convention. Then all the states send delegates. So each state can send as many delegates as they want. They can set up rules on what they can and can't do, which they should. And then they go to the convention and we debate. And so each, it's run like any sort of body, right? So floor to Minnesota, and Minnesota person, delegate stands up and said, I propose this. And then they discuss, right? So once they're proposed, and you get to a point where you're voting, it's a simple majority at the convention. So people say, once we hit 26, then it's a yes, we want to send that back to the states to be ratified. And we can do that for however many ones that are on the books, so to speak, at that point. And so again, they get sent back to the states. Now, 3/4 of the states have to say yes for it to become an amendment, which is a super high bar. If you really think about how to get 3/4 of any group of people to do anything together, that's difficult, right? Not to mention states, right? There are diverged, very diverse, that too. Opinions about all the states, right? We can hear all kinds of things about each state has their thing, like they're about this and, et cetera, et cetera. So to get 3/4 of them to agree, it's got to be something that's going to be for the good of the country. Otherwise, it's going to go. Because even let's say one body in one of the 13 states could say no, and then it's not going to pass, right? So it's a pretty high bar. It kind of gives it a very difficult path. It's not going to let anything get out of control, basically. You've got a lot of checks and balances all the way through there. So that's another thing that you'll hear, like a runaway convention kind of thing. It's almost impossible for that to actually happen, given what's required for all that to go down. So if 3/4 of the states say, yes, we want it as an amendment, which we've done with the 27 amendments so far, but it's all been through Congress. So Congress has proposed, like, prohibition, and then 3/4 of the states at least said, yes, we want it, and then later they said, no, we don't. But it happened that way, right? It all happened through Congress. We're talking about doing it the other way, the second half of that clause in Article 5, where the states call the convention and propose the amendments, and then we go back to the states to ratify. In either case, you have to have 3/4 of the states ratify it, but it's just the way we go about doing the amendments gives us, the states, more power in the say of what actually is going to get proposed. So how we do that is, one, we have this resolution. So this is, this is kind of a mock-up. I'll read you the part that is pertinent to, kind of how it works or how it's stated. But all the states that have introduced this has used this wording. So we're trying to get everyone to use the same wording. Otherwise, it can be thrown out. And we definitely don't want that. It's too much work not to. So the part that's interesting, or, this is just so you know what it said. Well, what are we trying to do? This is what it says in the actual resolution. So section 1 is, the legislature of the state of Minnesota hereby applies to Congress under the provisions of Article 5 of the Constitution of the United States for the calling of a convention of the states limited to proposing amendments to the Constitution of the United States that impose fiscal restraints on the federal government, limit the power and jurisdiction of the federal government, and limit the terms of office for its officials and for members of Congress. So those are the three areas. Anything that's at the convention, let's bring this up again. So anything that's outside of those three is immediately thrown out. It's out of order. So unless it falls in those three, it cannot be discussed. So another check and balance on the, quote, runaway convention idea. Or somebody, taking over somehow. It's got to fall within these three or it's thrown out. That's how it works. All right, the other thing, as far as what we're trying to do is we're trying to build a grassroots army, which we're doing a very, very good job so far. There's over 4 million people that are supporting what we're doing, and that's one of the largest ever, and we're going for the largest ever. So it comes from things like this today, right? And if you want to, who's a grassroots member? Well, I'd say we are at this point. You're concerned enough that on a Saturday morning you came and listened to some random person talk about this. I'd say you're concerned enough. And so you certainly are qualified to be a part of the grassroots army, if you will, of people that want to see this change. We want to fix this. We've got, right now there are 15 states that are passed, right? Wisconsin's super close to being another passed, and there are other states in the works. And you'll see that those are the green states up there on that map. And if you want, again, this is on the website, so if you want to go into detail with all this. So this actually comes from a survey that the National Convention of States Office did on who would be in favor or not in favor of Convention of States once they understood what the process was. So they surveyed some of the non-passed states. Minnesota was one of them. And they found a majority of, even through parties. So Republicans, 75% of them said, yes, I'd be for a convention. 55% of Democrats said, yes, I'd be for a convention. And other independents, et cetera, 63%. In all three political areas, right, it was a majority, which means a majority of Americans are very interested. Once they understand what this is about and what it can do, they want to do this. So that's really heartening for me. Minnesota actually had the highest. We got 76% of all polled said they'd be for a convention of states. So across all the board. So that means that it's got support if we get enough people to understand what it's about, do things like this, spread the word through Facebook, through texting, through Instagram, whatever, and let people know, no, there's a way we can fix this. And it doesn't really matter what side you're on. And for me, I don't see it as a right and left issue. And we're talking about smaller government, which does tend to lean towards more to the right of the aisle. I get that. But really, it's about federal and state. It's kind of like top and bottom, or up and down, if you will, rather than right and left. It's more of that issue, for me, for sure. Because it's just, there's too much power. They have too much to lose by not doing this, right? So we as the people need to say, no, that's not what we want anymore. We want it to go back to, you're serving us, not the other way around. So anyway, that's encouraging to me that it doesn't matter what political party you're affiliated with. There are reasons to look at this from a power problem, right? I mean, who wants the government to run everything? I don't. The bigger the government, the less freedom we have. That's kind of just how it works. And there are people that want more government. I get that. But I don't see that as a good trade-off, personally. I'd rather have my freedom. That's me personally, right? I'll just throw my personal opinion in there again. We do have some endorsements from very high-profile people in the country, around the world even. Mark Levin, Dr. James Dobson. There's a list of endorsements on the site. So if you want to see those that are for saying, yes, this is a really good idea. Picked out a few of them here, but if you want to go there, you can go to conventionofstates.com/endorsements, and there's a huge list of quotes and or the people that are for this and are behind what we're doing. Mark Levin's been around probably the farthest in this process. He latched on this quickly. If you haven't read his book, Liberty Amendments, I'd suggest it, because that gives you a good idea of some ideas of how that might work. It's not the handbook for convention of states, but it's a good start on, well, what could be proposed and what would it mean? So anyway, this is a thought. Another thing is, I guess it kind of turns into this. Do something, like I mentioned at the beginning, right? Whether it's just signing the petition. By the way, who's already signed the petition for convention of states? Awesome, great. All right, so those that haven't, we have cards here. You can do it online. Just if this looks like a good solution here, or at least enough that you go, yeah, this makes sense. I want to know more, but yeah, I can see where this makes sense. Sign the petition. That would be probably the most important thing you do at this point. And then we can send that to your representatives, and they'll know they've got people in their district that care. And the more that care, the more they're going to jump on board and go for it. Because that's how it works. It's a numbers game. This whole thing is numbers. That's why we want to build a grassroots army. We don't necessarily want to just talk about it, change a few people's mind, and then go back to the way it was. Right? We want to get a whole bunch of people saying, no, we need to fix this and stay engaged and do this. The second, so there's that. Sign the petition. Again, you can do that online. We've got some here, etc. Another thing you can do is be more active as a volunteer as part of the team. Be a district captain. So be somebody that's willing to talk to those in your neighborhood or sit down with people and just tell them about what's going on. I happen to do that and this. You don't have to present this idea to a bunch of strangers. If that's not something that you want to do, don't, right? That's just something I'm very comfortable with, and I happen to also be a district captain. So the district captain really is kind of, you could say, on the front lines of making things move forward. We haven't filled all of our district captain spots, so we'd be happy to, whoever we can to fill in his spots. And later, I'm sure Jackie can fill in more details about that. If that's a concern and you want to know more detail, certainly ask us in a little bit. And the other thing you can do is donate. There's a couple of ways you can do that. We have a donation box back.
They won't term limit themselves. We want this in place, and as you've just presented, this needs to go to the state legislature and state senate. They have the same problem. Mm-hmm. They don't want to put term limits on themselves. How do we convince our state legislature to put this forward without thinking that they're also putting term limits on themselves at the state level?
Right. Well, as far as this is concerned, we're only talking federal. Right. Now, it is a concern. Right. And personally, I'd like term limits on everybody. Right. Sure. But the way I see it is this: when you're talking to a state legislator, they get usurped. Their power gets usurped by the federal government. They say, you have to do this, you figure out how to pay for it, mm-hmm. Right? That just negated all the state's power right there. And they do that constantly, and have been for a long time, either with dangling out money for them or just demanding, right? Either way. So I just tend to talk about that part, and we're talking about the federal. Now, if they are concerned about their own term limits, it's the same problem. It's just on a smaller scope, right?
But
and
we need to get them to do
we do. When we're just talking federal. So we're only talking about the federal government here, and they're usurping your power. I generally start there.
Okay.
Fair enough?
Well, I think we have a hard time convincing
there'll be some
state legislature to go along with it.
There will be some that'll definitely resist it. I don't disagree. Yeah. And if we can get them to see it's not about them and their fiefdom, that it's more about the federal government, I think we have a better chance. Yeah. Greg, go ahead.
I don't think we'll have as much problem with the state, because the one thing, none of them are really in it for the money. They all got other jobs. They can't live on what the state's paying them, like what the federal can. And I've talked to, and that's why we need this group here. We need to have them, they need to know that we're watching them. And I met with our state representative, Dave Baker, in Wilmer a few weeks ago. And after having a discussion with him, he's signed on to it. And he's the one that brought it to me. He says, I want to run maybe another 2 or 3 years, but he says, there's got to be a point to where people step aside and let somebody else come in. So I don't think that would be a stumbling block at the state level. That's just my opinion.
It will be for some. Let's not be silly. But I think there's enough people like Dave that would say, I shouldn't be here my whole life. Like, I got other things I got a life. I want to, I think there's enough. I think there's enough wiggle room. And I do. I hope so too. Right? Good. Any other questions? Anything else? Or comments or anything else? Yeah. Swing around there for you. All right. Go ahead.
Which state of Minnesota are you talking about?
Which state?
Yes.
Clarify. What do you mean?
There are many states of Minnesota in the, in your statement there that we all want to be the same on. You said the state of Minnesota.
Yeah. So
As opposed,
well, just the state as far as the people of the state of Minnesota want to call for a convention.
the state of Minnesota as opposed to Minnesota or the Minnesota Republic or the Republic of Minnesota. In history, there's all kinds of states and they all fall in different jurisdictions. So I'm trying to get to which jurisdiction we'd be under.
I would say the state of Minnesota. You're referring to those at this point, if I'm hearing you right.
Yes, I don't
No, you
know if you know what the state of Minnesota is. It's a corporate entity.
Right now that's the governing body over us. So I would say that's going to be the one we got to deal with.
I would say when someone passes the laws, that's the one we want.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
okay, how many here are over 70? Okay.
Few.
When I went to school, we had the branches of government being, the federal government being the national, the territorial, and the municipal. And that was in the earlier grades. And by the end of high school, I learned that it was the legislative, the executive, and the judicial. So somewhere there was a schism that I have never reconciled until after retirement. I tried to get to the bottom of that.
well, I would say whoever the Speaker of the House is and Leader of the Senate, when they stand up behind the podium, whoever they're talking to, that's who we're talking to. So I don't know which one that is, so.
Yeah, I mean we're dealing with the legislative branch as far as
Right.
what we're talking about this.
Yeah,
And so the federal government was created how? Who created the federal government?
The states.
The states did.
Mm-hmm.
Which states were those?
Original 13 colonies.
the 13
13
colonies.
original colonies.
Mm-hmm.
Those were the organic states.
But what's the point? I don't follow what you're getting to, I'm
Well,
sorry.
you need a certain, you need a
We
certain
need
political-
34 states, we need 34 state legislatures to approve this, to move it onto a convention of states.
Those states have to be the organic states with the right political status, being an American national, state national, not any federal
Well-
government citizen.
Okay, but I imagine somebody's gonna figure that out. I'm not gonna worry about that. Go ahead, you got a question? You got a stretch?
Time to stretch.
50 states of the United States. The 50
Okay.
states of-
Any other questions? Anything else we can
Minnesota.
try to clarify?
Not the same. That's,
Yeah.
So we have currently 15 states who have both the Senate and House.
Yeah, the House and the Senate both have passed. They're past states. Yes,
Can
correct.
you tell me, what's that?
Unless they're unicameral.
Yeah,
Right,
unless.
right.
But 50 state bodies have
Yeah.
said, yes, we want a
Yes,
convention.
right.
Yep.
So I know Wisconsin currently, the House passed the resolution. How many other states have,
Like half the, half?
yes, right,
At
Boy.
least 9 right now.
I thought it was 8, but is it 9?
okay.
So around 8 or 9, let's say 9, right? So we're close.
Yeah.
Right, we're getting there. We're over halfway for sure. And,
Okay.
we need 34, so.
And we have about 17 where it was introduced into one or the other chamber, just resides in committee.
Okay.
So, there's action, right? A lot of action going on. We're keep on the ground roots so that we get a groundswell of support, and then if people say, oh, I guess I better vote yes, or I'm going to be gone. That sort of thing, right? Okay, good question. Anything else?
Is our governor part of this process, or is it just the legislative branches?
Good question. So he's asking about, just in case for Facebook, he's asking, is the governor part of this process, or is it just legislators? The governor has nothing to say about this. It's all through the legislature, and then once that there is a convention called, the federal government has nothing to say about it. Once they're at the convention, it is all state, that's it. Nobody else can tell us what to do, so to speak. Now, each state can have their own rules of what, their delegates can and can't do. But as far as the federal government or governors or any outside body beyond that, they have nothing to say about it. Which is, again, another checks and balances in the whole thing, which is great. That's a smart thing. Yeah,
Maybe I missed when you explained it before, but
that's okay.
who would be the delegates to this convention of states? How would the delegates be chosen?
The delegates are chosen by each state. So each state can decide how they want to do that. So it's really, there is no one way. And if you go back, and I haven't done this much research on that, but if you go back in history, I've heard there is precedent from the original states. They used to have conventions between them often before we federalized, so to speak. So there's precedent back there law-wise that you can look to and say, oh, that's how they did it, that makes sense, right? So we can go back in time and look at those documents. As far as what we got now, that's something that needs to be discussed. That's why we want to have a lot of people involved, so we get the best ideas like, well, who should be going? Should it be somebody in the legislature, or should it be somebody that's not part of the legislature, right? So we need to make sure that we're really clear about that as we get closer. That's part of the discussion, for sure.
And as a follow-up to that is,
Yeah.
how, in the process where the states make that decision, are we going to be able to escape partisanship, which is, I think, drives a lot of our problems today?
Right. So yeah, how do we escape partisanship in the delegate process? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to escape it. It's part of our society at this point. Let's be honest, right? There's going to be infighting. That's going to go. It's a political process, right? It's just in a different arena now. So I don't think we're going to get rid of any of that. I think the more we're engaged, the more we're clear about what our intentions are, will make it easier for people to grab on or join the train or not. Does that make sense? So I think it's going to be an ugly process like everything is with human beings, right? I mean, that's the way it's going to be. But I think if we're clear about our intentions, which I believe we are, I think we have a clear enough picture of like what we're going for. And if you're not for that, well, then I guess you're not going. Does that make sense? I'm not the one to decide. I'm just telling you like what I see so far. This is what I see. And that seems to be the conversation with those that are involved heavily in what we're talking about. Fair? Great, thanks. Yeah, great.
And one other thing on that, I think going back to the importance of the grassroots is going to be. Now, we're going to ask you, if you have not signed the petition, and ask you to sign it. But that's not going to be the end of your work, because there's plenty of opposition out here for this. So there's going to be times coming up, once we get the 34 states that are on board, and the state legislature has to, if the state legislature decide they're going to appoint the commissioner for it, which more than likely that's what they'll do, they need to know that they're being watched through that. Because the opposition, George Soros and his groups, they're going to be in there like a biting sow trying to get these people trying to get somebody to take over the convention. So we need to know that we've got 100,000 Minnesotans here with our eyes on that Congress. So when that time comes, when they start debating this about who they're sending, we're going to come back to you and through your emails, we're going to say, okay, we need another phone call now. We need you to phone call the guy and say, we're watching you, we're watching you. And then when that's done, then we go to the convention, and any amendments that come out of there come back to the states. Again, we need to call you and say, okay, you need to let the states know we're watching you all through this. Because if we do this and then we step back, we're going to lose. I will guarantee we're going to lose. Because there's millions and millions of dollars on the other side that are ready to pounce on this thing. So this is going to be a long process over years to get this done.
Yeah, and that's, just to reiterate, that is why we want a lot of people involved. A few people can't do all of that. It's not going to happen. So we need to be engaged. We need to be part of this process. We need to be actually activists, if you will. right, in this, and not shy away from saying, no, this is what we want, and keep telling them, no, I told you, I want this, you know. So, anyway.
Digital soldiers.
Yeah, in a way, yeah, digital soldiers is a good way to think of it. That's one way to reach out to people, and just talking to people, right? Just saying, hey, have you heard about this, and that kind of thing. That's both, everything, right? That's very good. Any other questions we can help clarify for anybody? Yeah.
So you're a district captain. How many districts are in Minnesota?
There's 134 districts.
Congressional, each congressional district
Yeah.
has a district, or should have. We want.
Right, we want a district captain for each congressional district, yeah.
That's not in the
House
state.
district.
Yeah, that's Minnesota, state of Minnesota.
Not congressional district, House district.
Yeah, House districts, yeah, House districts.
Minnesota House.
Yeah, Minnesota House districts. Yep. So we have openings. We
Why
need
don't
to,
you do it by county, then you'd only have 80-some. 80.
because each House district has a rep, and we'd want as many people on board as we can to be for us, instead of trying to consolidate and have problems with a county. Yeah.
So I'm just wondering if there's anybody here that hasn't signed the petition yet that's ready to do so now. We can make short order of it. So we'll get them handed out. Anybody else? Come on, you know you want to.
Everybody's doing it.
Okay,
How many times have you signed it?
just once. If you've already signed it.
How many dead people?
Hopefully 0, we don't want any of that.
Well,
That's
you know,
silly.
and we have call commandos who call and promote events. And when they find out that someone has passed, then we mark them as such, and we're not gonna.
Yeah, we're not going to play games with that one. But point taken.
And if you're not sure if you did, when I get ready to enter them, if you're already in there, then it won't go in again. Oops.
We may update your information, say you changed the address or something, but it won't count twice. You've already signed it, and you sign it again. That's okay. That's great. That means good. You're covered. We'll just make sure that we're not being loose with the books.
Okay, who else? Come on. Don't be shy.
All right. The other thing, did you want to jump to
Yes.
next? So the other thing we'd like to, I wouldn't say request, but almost request, like really invite you as heavily as we can to right now actually write a little note or a letter to your Senate rep and your House rep. And we're going to do a search on March 10th where we're going to hand deliver these to all the reps at the Capitol. And so having as many as we can get into them and people handwriting something is way more effective than a phone call or an email. Like demonstrably better. So we're going to impose and say, please. Now we have actually cards that we've made to make this a simple process today. So write a short note. So I'm going to flip up 4 really, here's some ideas about what to write to them right now. It doesn't have to be long. It just needs to be from the heart and honest, and in a good way, a positive way. Like, I support convention of states because I see this as a problem because, and I want you to, et cetera. So like this one, dear Senator, if you know your senator's name, great, or you can just say, dear Senator, I'm one of your constituents and I'm very concerned that the federal government is out of control. Please support convention of states when it comes up as a resolution. Something very simple, right? But very heartfelt. And so that'd be one idea. Another one might be, dear representative, the convention of states gives me hope. Here's why. And you write your reason, right? Another one might be, dear Representative X, I support the Convention of States project, the group looking to propose amendments which will your hot button, right? That would be a good one. And then another one might be, dear Senator, the United States of America is in trouble. We, the people, have been generously patient with our federal government, but, I would add the but right there for me, but this is out of control. For me, federal spending is way out of control. We need to put some checks on it. The Convention of States is the only way I can see us getting a handle on that at this point. Please support it. Something along those lines. So
these cards were designed by one of our team members, so it has our 3 points on the left-hand side, and it really will, when the legislators receive it, distinguish us from any other Convention of States initiative that might be going on at the state capitol. So why I want to tell you the importance of this, other legislators in other states have ultimately reversed their roles or their position on, or their stand on Convention of States when they received the handwritten notes from their constituents. It has a lot more weight, a lot more bearing than an email would. And so we've been collecting these. We have, I think, about 287 to deliver when we end up at the Capitol on March 10th. And so we'd like to include yours with it. So you need one for your House rep, your Minnesota House rep, and one for your Minnesota senator.
Yeah, so it's Minnesota, not federal.
And if you're not sure who they are, just address it to your legislator, and then put your return address, sign it, put your return address, and we will make sure that it goes to the appropriate legislator.
Yeah, if we have your
This
address,
is
we can figure it
really-
out.
This is one of the most crucial steps in citizen activism that you can take. Really gratefully
That's all right.
appreciate it.
2 weeks ago, when I met with Representative Baker, and we were talking about this, he said, when I see a computerized one, he says, I'll put it on my desk, but he says, I've never read them. But he says, if I get something handwritten, I read every one. And he says, when I look at it, if there's misspelling or grammar, he says, then I really pay attention, because that is from their heart.
Yeah.
I know they didn't copy it off a board.
Yeah,
So
good
they
point.
they look at these.
Yeah, so it's not about it being professional. It's you, the constituent. You're very concerned. You're representing me. You need to know what I think. Here's what I think, right? And whether it has grammar errors or not, that's what I'm thinking, and that's impactful. And we don't get handwritten letters a lot anymore. The younger generation hardly writes at all. My children don't write very much, right? Right. There's a lot of texting going on, right? But not you don't see handwritten. My son cannot read my mother's cursive handwriting. I have to read it for him because they don't learn how to read cursive anymore. And she has beautiful penmanship. But it's kind of a lost art. So something that is written, that's why it carries so much weight. It's becoming rare. So for someone to take the time to actually, move ink around seems to mean more, and it does. It does, because it is coming from you, literally. Anyway, a little extra thought there. Okay. So, if anybody else needs cards or needs help or whatever, I'm going to, if you need a stepping off point, I put these 4 up here. If you don't and you're fine, great. Those cards that we are handing out, they are very well done. And even though they're, kind of a form, if you will, your handwritten part is going to mean more than what the form looks like. But it's nice because it does have the 3 points. It reminds them of like, what is that? Oh, it's this. Great. So very well done in that sense. So if you have any more questions, we'll be here for a little bit longer for sure. Feel free to ask if you want to ask in the group. We can do it one-on-one and talk through other things. Again, we do have, if you want to donate to help us with these cards, buying the cards and the pocket conventions and all those, there's a basket back there for that. Thank you, Facebook people, for being online. Great to see you all again. And with that,
I just want to say one more thing for
Excellent.
Facebook people. So if you want to write to your Minnesota legislators, and you can get your handwritten note cards or letters to us at our post office box that we've set up for just that. We need to have them before the 8th in time to deliver. So that post office box address is P.O. Box 265. That's Chaska, Minnesota, 55318. So
Excellent.
if you're on Facebook, get those pens and papers ready.
okay. With that, thank you very much for coming.
That
The
ends.
8th of March?
March 10th. Or by the 8th. By the 8th of March, which is coming up, a couple weeks, right? So we're getting down to the wire here. So, spread the word, and if you have some people you want to, hey, write a letter, send it there, get it there by the 8th. So, mail it by the 6th probably, just to make sure, right? Post office, all that. Yeah.
Where are some other town halls in the state between now and then?
Let's see, the one on, is it
Got
the,
one in New Ulm.
yeah, New Ulm, that's what I couldn't remember what it was. New Ulm on the 7th, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Just a minute. I don't remember. Let's see, where did I put them?
The Facebook
New Ulm
page,
is March 7th.
Yeah, well, I'll send it.
At the community center, and then we're going to be
White Bear Lake on the
White Bear Lake
21st
on
of
the
March.
21st.
Yeah.
And then April is in the works. We're working on May too. So it's important if you get our emails to. We try to put that it's about a Minnesota event in the subject line, check them out, because you don't want to miss them. We really appreciate the support that we get.
Yeah, and if there's one happening in an area where you have family, friends, send them, right? You don't necessarily have to go yourself, just send people, it's totally fine. It is all on our Facebook page, so the events are there, so the ones that are up and running there, you should be able to find them there too. If not, they'll be coming soon. So those are the ones that are scheduled for right now.
Include Facebook. Chesk, address one more time. P.O. Box.
265 55318. But I'd really like to take the cards you're doing today, I'd like to take those now. We have to set up packets. We're going to print out a list of the petition signers for each legislator. There's 201 in Minnesota, that's a lot of lists to print out. And then we're going to give them the cards in their packet, as well as they'll each have a pocket guide too. Everything you want to know about Convention of States practically is in that pocket guide. If you didn't get one, grab it on your way out.
Oh, I was gonna go, circle back to did the local rep make it? Oh,
I just got off the phone with him.
Okay.
Just left Wilmer,
okay,
so he will be a while. But, he did say he is supportive of the efforts.
okay,
Oh, great.
great. And who's
Dean
that?
Erdahl.
Dean Erdahl, okay, good. So Dean's a supporter, great, yay. All right, just need more of those. So with that, yeah, we do want to take the cards today. That'd be great. That way you don't have to mail them. You don't have to, worry about doing it later. Just write it real quick now. That'd be awesome. If you certainly don't have to, but that is the most convenient way to do it. We can save some postage for you and or us or whatever. So finish those up. We're going to be hanging around for a little bit, so no rush. With that, we're kind of done for the town hall. So thank you very much for coming. Much appreciated. Thanks, Facebook.
Is there a target day or year to try to get this convened?
As fast as possible. No, there isn't, only because it's a huge process.
And the 15 states that have already passed it, any chance that they would go backwards if everybody